Jorgen, newlywed and fresh from Norway, travels with 6 chestnuts in a pocket to their new farm in Iowa. V is soon pregnant. He plants the chestnuts. Their firstborn son dies in infancy. One chestnut fails to sprout. Soon enough, there are 3 children and the hope of a chestnut grove, that they thicken like ancient things. One tree does not make it through the harsh winter of 1862. A sun destroys another by picking off all its leaves. One tree doesn't make it through a drought. A 5th one is struck by lightning and burned to the ground. But one tree becomes big and grand. Their children grow up, one a banker, another an assessor for the county. But for the last remaining chestnut, all this happens in a couple of new fissures, an inch of added rings. The tree bulks out, its bark spirals upward, its scalloped leaves carry on, turning sunlight into tissue. It more than abides. It flourishes, a globe of green health and vigor. Eventually, Jorgen is buried underneath the sole surviving chestnut tree that he planted. It grows into a sentinel. The locals use it to direct travelers on the flat expanses of Iowa. Jorgen's son, John, buys an early camera and starts taking pictures of the tree from the same position every month. He continues this ritual his entire life. Meanwhile, the chestnuts up north were majestic, but the southern trees are gods. Now the gods are dying, all of them. Imported Chinese chestnuts carry a deadly fungus that attacks the native chestnuts, turning them orange in July. Gardeners try to combat the infection, but death races across the Northeast, vanishing the country's most harvested tree. Millions of dead stumps sprout suckers that struggle on before dying of infection. 4 billion trees vanish in a myth. Some of the only trees that survive are ones planted by pioneers in the Midwest. The chestnut tree, now seemingly alone, obeys an ancient formula. Keep still. Wait. John's son, Frank, takes up his father's ritual of taking pictures of the tree. Frank dies in World War I, and Frank Jr. takes up the family cause, which becomes a monthly exercise in noticing a thing worth no notice at all, a creature as steadfast and reticent as life. Each photo shows only that lone tree shrugging off the staggering emptiness that the man knows so well. A barn burns, Vietnam, chemicals like Roundup begin being sprayed. Neighboring farmers start retiring to Arizona and Texas. Monstrous tractors crawl over the landscape. Nitrogen fertilizer is shipped in by rail. Monocrops take over the prairie. Everything a human being might call the story happens outside the photo's frame. Inside the frame, through hundreds of revolving seasons, there is only that solo tree, its fissured bark spiraling upward into an early middle age, growing as the speed of wood. For Nick Hull, the great-great-great-grandson of Jorgen, 3/4 of a century dance by in a 5-second flip through the photos. He is mesmerized by the pictures. The holidays of his childhood at the farm come back to him. It's all encoded in that animated tree. He feels the years peel off like steamed wallpaper. Time passes differently for trees than for humans. Though a tree seems stationary and lifeless from our point of view, the photo book allows people to see time from a tree's perspective, visually portraying its growth and movement at a rate that we can actually understand time as trees see it. The whole family is violently practical, but these pictures of the chestnut tree are not. These family photos inspire Nick to become an artist. Nick Hole drives to Omaha for an art exhibition and gets caught in a blizzard and misses Christmas Eve with everyone in the family farmhouse. He arrives on Christmas Day, initially thinking his family is asleep, but quickly discovers that a propane gas leak has killed everyone. He runs outside, stumbles out onto the snow, and when he looks up, it's into the branches of the sentinel tree. Lone, huge, fractal, and bare against the drifts, lifting its lower limbs and shrugging its ample globe. All its profligate, man, I even underlined this word to get it down. Oh, all its profligate twigs click in the breeze as if this moment too, so insignificant, so transitory, will be written into its rings and prayed over by branches that wave their semaphores against the bluest of Midwestern winter skies. What if we understood time as a tree does? It would be less based on the tick-tock of clocks and more on the turning of the earth. Trees can sense sunlight and temperature. As the season transitions from summer to fall and the days get shorter, trees notice that the amount of darkness each day is increasing. This signals them that it's time to prepare for winter. Then something happens in spring. They notice the amount of light returning. The stored energy of sap runs upward. Thoreau was right. They are sentient beings. They carry wisdom within their body of bark. They are our parents, our parents' parents. This past winter, near Paul Smith's, we parked in a barricaded old log road entrance. We were in search of Elder Grove, a group of about 50 eastern white pines that were born more than 100 years before the Revolutionary War. The eastern white pine can become majestic if you just let it be. One is growing in my front yard. The people who owned the house before us trimmed it to make it look like a Christmas tree. It grows big and wild now, arms extending out like big prayers, like these quintessential Adirondack trees should look. So about 4 centuries ago, a storm, most likely, toppled part of the forest floor and made a clearing for this grove to burst forth. They probably didn't ever get logged because they were close to a property line and loggers weren't sure where the line was. One of the elders died a couple of years back and it made the news. North Country Public Radio and the Adirondack Examiner, not national news per se, but it made the news. They are not all that old compared to some species of trees, but in the coming years, the elder grove will reach their natural lifespan and die. In 400 years' time, think of what they must have felt and endured and seen. Droughts, fires, bitter Arctic winters, all recorded in its body. Their fears of lumbermen, their gratitude for a forever wild state park. From the logger trail, I tried following the cryptic directions of some online forum from 15 years ago, but the vegetative navigational markers it spoke of had grown up too heartily to be recognized as places to turn. We found some old big pines, but not the grandest stand of eastern white pines in the US. It was getting cold. The kids were hungry, so we headed back. Maybe it's better I didn't actually see them, because now I can imagine them and keep imagining them tall, pointing to the wintry blue Adirondack sky, a grove of parents full of the stories of storms, so sturdy, almost timeless, standing cool and composed before a million universes as cool and composed as wood. What wisdom they must have growing at the speed of trees. What if we had the perspective of trees? Our sense of time would surely be different, wouldn't it? Pulled by the sun, change would come gracefully, gradually, and often. We would record in our bodies these changes for posterity. We might ask ourselves, what right now is happening that is of historical significance? What will an historian 10 or 20 years from now say about this time? There's no doubt wars in Gaza and Ukraine, but maybe not much else. What if someone wrote a biography about us? What would they write of this season of our lives? If we pull back and have that bigger perspective, we just might be more serene and not fret about losing the small branches. You see, the tree cells obey that ancient formula. Keep still. Wait. This is wisdom for us. And all the while, they never forget to turn into the seasons of change. And so I went down to the river, the grass river, to hear what our old rooted parents might have to say. I sat on the hard, dark, volcanic banks not far from the bridge to SUNY Canton and listened to the lessons of the leaves. They stood still and did not shout and said this, which has been edited for length and clarity. There is a time to grow bark, to protect yourself from the fires of life. A time to shed leaves, a time to drop acorns, a time to let go. There is a time for drought and storm, a time to communicate with your friends in the earth, a time to be dormant, a time for fungus, a time for bugs to lay their eggs on your leaves. There is also a time for decay, a time to hollow out and become a home. There is a time for death, yet you can remain as nourishment for generations to come. There is a time to grow, the trees said. It will be imperceptible at times. Grow at the speed of wood, they joked. Then there was a pause, and they got all serious again. Keep still and wait. View time like we do, the trees said. Along the way, remain as cool and as composed as wood. Remain rooted and whole, for change is always coming. And all I could say in return was, so may it be, and amen.